Today's keynote is about communicating at the speed of culture. A few years back, we started looking at all the work we were producing and putting out into the world. And what we started realizing was, go back 5-10 years, you were producing pieces of work that were communicating to an audience that was looking at only specific pieces of information that was being presented to them. So you were competing against others in your category. So if you were a telecom company like yourself, work that you produce goes out and you compete for the attention of your audience that's also looking at other pieces of work being produced by other telcos. If you're an auto manufacturer, you're competing against auto, and so on and so forth. Where we arrived at was, now you are competing against everything that's happening in culture. And by culture, what we mean is, it's everything that you see coming on your social media feeds, it's everything you're watching on Netflix, it's the picture from your sister of cats, it's the picture from your neighbor of your dog running away, it's pictures from your college friends telling you that they're getting married, that they're getting divorced, they're having a kid. And all of this stuff's coming in, and it's coming in large volumes. So Dimitri actually asked me this question earlier on. What is that volume? So the most recent number is, on average, each one of us is consuming 34 gigabytes of data a day. Right, so if you put into context everything you're viewing, reading, liking, sharing, it's on average about 34 gig. In the last 60 seconds that I've been speaking, 500 hours of video just got uploaded to YouTube. Not viewed, uploaded to YouTube. 3.3 million Facebook posts, 29 million WhatsApps. How many of you were WhatsApping while you were waiting for the screens to come on? I'm sure at least half the room. And 3.8 billion Google searches, right? So this is happening in the span of 60 seconds. 2017, 1.2 trillion digital photos are going to be taken. 85% of those are going to be taken on a smart device, so it's primarily your phone. Or if you're like my mother, then you'll take it on an iPad, which is very embarrassing, but she likes holding it up and taking pictures. And a majority of these pictures that you take are then going to be shared primarily on social, that you then expect your friends to like and share and comment on, and if they don't, you're no longer friends. And of that 1.2 trillion pictures taken, 300 million will make it on social media and on Instagram as selfies. So there are going to be 300 million selfies that go out this year on Instagram that all of you somehow at some point are going to be involved in liking or sharing, right? So every piece of work we produce and you produce is going to have to compete with all of those selfies. And here's the other interesting thing, right, is because there's so much information that is coming out to you and you are consuming it, mankind has started evolving, right? So going back 10 years, mankind is now doing things at a faster speed than it was doing before. So a couple of experiments, right? The first one is 10 years ago, it was assumed that most people would read 100 words a minute. And that was your average human being, right? So some would go up to 120, up or down 10, but on average, 100 words a minute. Recent studies have shown that most of us are now reading at 300 words a minute. And the reason you're doing that is primarily because you're consuming so much content, you're reading faster. So here's an experiment, and I'd like you guys to tell me if you've been able to read at that speed, right? Ready? There you go. Second thing is, again, going back 10 years, it was understood that it would take you roughly 100 milliseconds to see an image and to recognize it. MIT last year worked out that number had come down considerably. So keep a close eye on the screen. Ready? What was it? So that's 13 milliseconds, right? So you're now able to see an image, recognize it in 13 milliseconds. And again, this is mainly attested to the fact that you are using so much information at once. You're seeing it, you're recognizing it, and you're able to respond to it very, very quickly. So as a result of this, right, advertisers have decided that we need to shorten the way we produce work. So gone are the 60-second ads that used to be produced for TV and cost $1 million, and you used to sit there and watch it from beginning to the end. 6 seconds is what YouTube feels is the amount of time a brand needs to convey a message to an audience, right? So when you look at it, 6 seconds feels like very little, but this is how long 6 seconds actually is. Right? Again, you look at that and you think, can you convey a message in 60 seconds? Here are two really good examples, right? First one. Six seconds. The second one is probably my favorite ad in 6-second format ever. Six seconds. So, even in 6 seconds, great brands become part of culture, right? You're able to produce work that people remember, they recollect, they share, they talk about, they get excited about, and we as TBWA believe that's what we're trying to do. And the way we do it is using a methodology called Disruption Live. Disruption Live allows us to keep an eye out on what's happening around the world. At any given time, we're pulling in huge amounts of data, huge amounts of insight from culture, and we're producing work for our clients that go out in near real time. That information doesn't just go out once. We send something out into the world and we see how it performs, and if we see it's performing well, then we keep producing more work to follow that up. So the first one is an example of work we produced for Nissan. Right? So, can anybody guess what the most popular day in the US is? Valentine's Day, Christmas, New Year? Any guesses?
Popular as a measure this.
As the one that most people get excited about. Nope. Football? Close enough. So, sorry? Super Bowl? Pretty close. So, we were looking at the American Day celebrations and seeing where people are most excited about. And the day the Americans are most excited about is National Donut Day, right? The highest amount of social conversation actually peaks around National Donut Day. So we were looking at Nissan as a client and we said, look, we need to do something for National Donut Day. And we said, okay, so you spin a car around in a circle, that's a donut, that's interesting. Then we looked at another cultural phenomenon that was happening at the time, where there were videos on social media where cooking was made quick. So people didn't have time to sit and watch 30 minutes of cooking, so they kind of shrunk it down. So we decided to combine the two and actually produce a piece of content for Nissan, which to date has been the most engaging piece of content ever produced by the brand. And this is it.
So now that the donuts are cool, we're gonna add the icing. Gently dip the donut and give it a little twist as you pull it out so the icing doesn't run. And now the best part, adding sprinkles. Happy National Donut Day.
For Adidas out of Tokyo last year. And this came out of a piece of insight we pulled looking at culture and data. So we were looking at data around runners that we could feed into Adidas to try and see what we could do with culture. And what we realized was Tokyo is the most difficult city in the world for runners. There are more red lights in Tokyo than anywhere else in the world. So what happens with runners is they start running, they stop, they start running, they stop, they start running, they stop, right? So we pulled in data from Tokyo's traffic department, Tokyo's local police, Tokyo's municipality, and we figured out if you start at a certain point in Tokyo, and if you ran at a certain speed, at a certain time of the evening, you would hit green lights all the way, right? So we actually turned this into a marathon for Adidas. We call it the Green Line Marathon. And the idea is everybody starts at the same point at the same time, and if you're keeping up speed, you go through. If you hit a red light, you're out. So again, we're pulling in culture and insight, and then we're kind of creating these into huge movements around different parts of the world. The other thing we've done with Disruption Live is this. So we're an agency of highly engaged people. We're all looking at different things at different times. So we've created this movement called Cultural Spotters. The idea behind Cultural Spotters is across 43 cities, it should be about 100 by this time next year. We've got 310 spotters, and all of these people are looking at different pieces of information around different topics. So you can see all of those here. It's from tech through to science and everything in between. Whenever we pick up a piece of information, it's then shared with the entire network. And what happens is every morning we produce a very short 2-minute piece of video that comes into every TBWA employee's inbox that gives us basically a download of what's happening in the world around all of these interesting areas in culture. We've also now decided we're going to start bringing in people from very interesting disciplines to further accelerate this. So we've realized we need people that are passionate about things other than advertising. So we've started bringing in magazine editors, news reporters, even clients as new hires to help us think differently and produce a lot of this output. We're also now sharing some of this with the outside world. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's TBWA_, and every single day there's a piece of culture that we sort of produce and share with the rest of the world. So keeping on the trend of Disruption Live and how we produce communication at the speed of culture, a couple of months ago, the new Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia decided that in 2017 it was okay for women to start driving. Right? It took them a little while, but they've gotten there, so it's fine. We noticed the piece of news. It came out at around 11:45 in the evening, and we wanted to get something out there that celebrated this movement, that women in Saudi were finally allowed to get behind the wheel of a car. We had one of the largest automakers as a client in the Middle East, Nissan, and we started speaking to Nissan at midnight, and the client was still up, which was very interesting. So we spoke to the client and we said, look, we've got an idea. We need to jump on this piece of news that's just come out of Saudi. We don't want to mention your brand. We just want to put something out into the world that says, hooray for women, they can drive in Saudi. So this was done in Photoshop. A designer did this at 12:45 in the morning, so within an hour we got all of this approved. And all this is an actual Saudi number plate, and we've just got GRL in the bottom. Went out, and this thing started picking up a huge amount of momentum. News outlets started picking it up, CNN picked it up, it pretty much blew up, and everyone was getting very excited. So we went and produced 2 6-second acts. This is the first one. Again, these were done within 24 hours. Just for authenticity, we made sure those ads were actually made in Saudi Arabia, and that was when we revealed the brand. So the first piece of communication didn't even say it had anything to do with Nissan. When we realized it was getting traction, then we said we'll put the brand behind it. Now, Disruption Live is not just about looking at things that are happening in real time and acting on it. It's also about seeing what's coming up in culture and building information towards it. So the biggest fight of the year and probably the last 100 years was the Mayweather-McGregor fight. It was pretty much everywhere. And our team in South Africa picked up on it. And they wanted to produce some content that was going to benefit a client that we've been working with, we are trying to help, which is the Johannesburg Ballet. So most people in Johannesburg don't go to the ballet. The ones that do go to the ballet are the rich and the famous. So we wanted to sort of open it up to young people and say, look, ballet is cool. It's not just about the rich and the famous and the old people going in. It's suitable for young people. So we prepared ourselves. We produced 2 pieces of output, and we released the one depending on who won the fight. And this was the one we put out. We believe brands that do not communicate at the speed of culture are well and truly going to get left behind. If you've got a brand that's talking to you about something that is not relevant, not timely, not of any interest to you, you're not going to pay attention to it. Sooner or later, those brands are going to get left behind. So this was, again, an interesting insight we picked up on when we were having these conversations. And our team in Lebanon ended up producing 2 commercials for a telco that talked about exactly this. So the insight was the data speeds and the telco coverage in Lebanon is so bad that they are at least 2 years behind the rest of the world. So here's the first piece of work we produced for them.
جاهز؟ أنا بشكر ربيع اللي سميني قايد باكت ثلج. أنا بتحدى طارق وعماد وعزيز ابن بدوية.
داني ابن لمية.
يلا يبقى السطر.
يا ويلي يا لمية. أرضي يا لمية.
بتحدى الطبيعة، بدي أحرق الثلج وبرا خلي حب الثلج هون بالبلد.
أجرم الولد أجرم هرب وحرق الثلج كله.
وهيدي شيء كايس.
برص
كايس برص. حدوا الطبيعة مثل ما بتحداها أنا. يا
حيدوا الطبيعة أجرم.
That's actually a real father and son. So the team went into the mountains in Beirut. They found these 2 guys. He actually walks around in the middle of winter in just a t-shirt, nothing else. So we said to them, have you heard of the Ice Bucket Challenge? This was shot about 2 months ago. They had no idea. So we said, this is the format that you want to follow it. So that's the first one. The second one was this.
Harlem Shake.
So this is about a bunch of elderly people in a fishing village, again in Lebanon, that have just discovered the Harlem Shake. So before I wrap up, just 4 final thoughts, right? The first one is you need to be timely and topical. So there's no point in you producing a great piece of work that goes out 6 weeks after something's happened in the world and expect people to still react to it. So you need to be timely. You need to either see a lot of this stuff coming to you well ahead of time and prepare, or you need to have a team of people that are ready and available to actually produce this and put it out. The second one is remaining topical, right? And I use this example, it's like you go into a party and everybody's talking about one thing, and then you stand in a corner and talk about something else, and you expect the rest of the party to sort of walk over to you because you're that interesting. And unfortunately, most brands think that's how we are, right? You kind of assume, I'm the brand, and whatever I say, people are just going to come and find that interesting. And that's not the case, so you need to be timely and topical. The second one is you can plan and prepare, right? So this is not about finding stuff in real time and reacting to it. We have huge amounts of information that we pull in. There are a huge number of calendars that we produce. It's about making sure you're looking at what's happening in culture, in your country, in your city, and thinking about some of this stuff ahead of time, getting things prepared, and then just putting it out into the world when it happens. And you need to be compelling, right? So this is where real communication comes into it, is you need to produce work that people actually want to see. It doesn't matter if you're timely and topical or if you're planned and prepared, but what you put out is not good work, then no one's going to take any notice of it. So in order for you to compete within that 34 GB of data you're consuming, it needs to be compelling work. The last one, and this is really important, is good enough. So a lot of times what happens is we spend so much time trying to get this absolutely perfect and art directed so very well. By the time it goes out, it's already too late. So a mentality of understanding that good is good enough. You get it out into the world, see how it's working, and then exactly how we did with the Saudi women driving is the first one goes out and see how it performs, and then you do the next one and the next one and the one after that. That's pretty much me, so thank you very much.